I stood in front of the mirror, the dim light casting shadows over the lines etched on my face. Each crease told a story. Years spent in the relentless pursuit of success, the kind that seemed to matter most in the eyes of society. I leaned in closer, examining the tired eyes that stared back at me. Was this really who I had become? A man defined by his work. A man who had sacrificed his passions, his joys, for the sake of duty. Do you even recognize yourself anymore? I muttered under my breath, the words hanging heavy in the air. The silence of my apartment felt like a weight on my chest, a reminder of the empty space beside me in bed. The absence was palpable, echoing through the walls. I could almost hear the laughter that once filled this space, the warmth of shared moments now replaced by a cold solitude. Just then, my phone buzzed, jolting me from my reverie. It was a message from an old friend, inviting me to a gathering at the office to celebrate a recent promotion. I sighed. The thought of mingling with colleagues who seemed to glide effortlessly through life made my stomach churn. Still, I couldn't bear the idea of declining. I slipped on my jacket, steeling myself for an evening of forced smiles and polite conversations. At the office, the atmosphere was electric with laughter and chatter. I could see my colleagues gathered around, their faces lit with excitement. The aroma of pizza wafted through the air, mingling with the sound of clinking glasses. I stood on the periphery, feeling like an outsider looking in. "Hey, Lucas, come join us," one of them called, waving me over. I forced a smile and approached, but as I settled into the circle, I felt the familiar pang of isolation. They were sharing stories, reminiscing about late nights and deadlines met, but I couldn't quite find my place among them. "Remember that time we pulled an all-nighter for the Johnson project?" One of them laughed, slapping another on the back. "I thought we'd never make it." "Yeah, and we did it all for what?" I thought, the bitterness rising in my throat. A promotion that means nothing if you have to sacrifice everything else. But I stayed silent, nodding along as they continued their banter. I chuckled at the right moments, played the role of the supportive colleague, but inside, I felt like a ghost, present yet invisible. As the laughter echoed around me, I could only think of the sacrifices I had made in pursuit of success, the moments I had missed, the passions I had buried. Later that night, I returned to my quiet apartment, the silence settling around me like a heavy blanket. I tossed my keys onto the table and let out a long sigh. My gaze drifted to the corner of the room, where an old guitar stood forgotten, its strings gathering dust. I approached it, hesitating for a moment before picking it up. It felt foreign in my hands, yet familiar all at once. I remembered the late-night jam sessions with friends, the laughter, the music flowing freely. I strummed a few chords, the sound resonating in the silence, awakening something deep within me. Why did I ever stop? I whispered to no one in particular, the memory flooding back with a rush of nostalgia. I could almost hear the voices of my friends, singing along, carefree and full of life. The longing I thought I had buried surged to the surface, igniting a flicker of hope. I set the guitar down for a moment, my heart racing. Perhaps this solitude didn't have to be a curse. Maybe it was an opportunity, a chance to rediscover the parts of myself I had long abandoned. I felt a spark of determination as I stood there, holding the guitar, contemplating all the paths I could take from this moment forward. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt ready to embrace it. As I stood in the middle of my living room, the soft light of the evening sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow over everything. The old guitar leaned against the wall, its dusty surface a reminder of the years gone by. I hesitated for a moment, the weight of the instrument feeling foreign in my hands. With a deep breath, I picked it up, the cool wood comforting against my skin. I brushed the dust off, my fingers trembling just slightly as I plucked the strings. The sound was a bit off, but it resonated through the silence of my apartment, filling the empty spaces with life. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the music wash over me. Memories flooded back, Late-night jam sessions, laughter, and friends gathered around, creating magic through melodies. My heart raced with a flicker of excitement, a feeling I had not experienced in years. I felt alive again. Maybe it's time to do something different, I whispered to myself, the words hanging in the air as if summoning the courage I needed. I decided to sign up for a guitar class at the local community center. It was a small step, but it felt monumental in my quest to reclaim the parts of myself that I had neglected for so long. The following week, I found myself sitting in a circle of chairs at the community center, the smell of wood and paint mixing in the air. The room buzzed with chatter as people introduced themselves. I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach, but I pushed it down. "Hi, I'm Lucas," I said, as I turned to the woman next to me. She had a lively spark in her eyes, and I could see the joy radiating from her presence. "Nice to meet you, Lucas. I'm Sarah," she replied with a warm smile. "I just started playing again after a divorce. It's never too late to pick up something you love, right?" Her words struck a chord within me. "You're absolutely right. I used to play a lot when I was younger, but life got in the way, I guess," I admitted, feeling a sense of camaraderie in our shared experiences. As the class progressed, I discovered that Sarah was not just a spirited woman. She was a beacon of encouragement. She was unafraid to share her story and her struggles, and it made me feel less alone. Each week, as we strummed together, I found myself looking forward to the classes, not just for the music, but for the connections we were building. "Have you ever thought about trying something else?" Sarah asked one day after class, as we lingered in the hallway. "Like painting or something creative. It's liberating to express yourself in different ways." Her suggestion sparked something in me. I used to draw a bit when I was younger. Maybe I could give painting a try. I responded, surprised at my own enthusiasm. "Let's do it. There's a painting class starting next week. We could go together," she exclaimed, her eyes gleaming with excitement. It felt exhilarating, this new chapter unfolding in front of me. I signed up for the painting class, my heart pounding with anticipation. I arrived the following week, armed with brushes and canvases, ready to explore this long-forgotten passion. The vibrant colors splashed across the canvas, each stroke bringing me a sense of freedom I had never known before. "Look at that," Sarah said, peering over at my canvas one evening. "You've got talent. This is beautiful." I felt a blush creep to my cheeks. "Thank you, Sarah. I feel like I'm discovering a part of myself that's been buried for so long," I admitted, feeling a swelling sense of pride. As the weeks turned into months, my evenings transformed from quiet solitude into vibrant explorations of art and music. I was no longer just Lucas, the man burdened by regret. I was becoming someone new, someone who embraced life with open arms. The solitude that once felt heavy began to lighten, morphing into a canvas of colors and melodies that filled my heart with hope. As I stood before the easel, the vibrant colors of paint glimmered under the soft light of my living room. Each hue whispered stories, memories of a life spent chasing the shadows of work and responsibility. I took a deep breath and dipped the brush into a bold blue, letting it glide across the canvas. This was no ordinary painting. It was a reflection of my journey, a solitary figure on a towering mountain, arms outstretched, embracing the vastness of the world around him. "Lucas, you've really captured something here," I murmured to myself, stepping back to admire the scene. The figure, though solitary, emanated strength and tranquility. It was a testament to my newfound understanding of solitude, not as a prison, but as a sanctuary. My heart swelled with a sense of accomplishment. I carefully hung the painting on the wall, right where I could see it from my favorite chair. It felt like a badge of honor, a reminder of how far I had come. Later that week, Sarah and I met at our usual cafe, a vibrant little spot filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. As I stirred my drink, I watched her animated expressions while she recounted her own artistic endeavors. She had a way of lighting up the room, and I found myself drawn to her infectious enthusiasm. "Have you thought about what's next for you, Lucas?" Sarah asked, leaning forward, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. What do you mean? I replied, slightly puzzled. I mean, you rediscovered painting and music. Why not take it a step further? You should perform at the open mic night at the community center. The thought sent a thrill of both excitement and dread coursing through me. Me? Perform? I haven't played in front of anyone in years. Exactly, and it's time to change that, she encouraged, a gentle smile crossing her face. You've got a story to tell, and your music might just resonate with someone who needs to hear it. I hesitated, the self-doubt creeping back like an unwelcome visitor. What if I mess up? What if no one cares? Lucas, she said firmly, this isn't about perfection. It's about sharing a piece of yourself. You owe it to yourself to try. Her words lingered in the air, a soft challenge pushing me out of my comfort zone. As the days passed, I found myself practicing more fervently, each note awakening a part of me that had long lain dormant. The guitar felt foreign at first, but with every strum, it began to feel like home again. The night of the open mic arrived, and my heart raced with a mix of nerves and exhilaration. I stood backstage, listening to the muffled sounds of applause and laughter filtering through the curtain. You can do this, I whispered to myself, my palms clammy as I tightened my grip around the guitar neck. When my name was called, I stepped into the spotlight, the warm glow illuminating the small stage. The audience looked expectant, and I felt the weight of their eyes on me. Just breathe, I reminded myself, and as I took a deep breath, the familiar scent of wood and strings filled my senses. I started with a soft strum, the first notes hanging in the air like delicate feathers. The melody unfolded, and I poured my heart into the lyrics, recounting tales of solitude, yearning, and the joy of rediscovery. As I sang, I noticed nods of recognition from faces in the crowd, and it fueled me further. When I finished, a wave of silence washed over the room, and for a fleeting moment, I feared I had failed. But then, the applause erupted like fireworks, filling the space with warmth and encouragement. I stood there, heart racing, feeling a rush of confidence I hadn't experienced in years. See? I told you. Sarah beamed from the front row, her clapping the loudest among the crowd. I couldn't help but smile back at her, my heart swelling with gratitude. I had stepped into the light, not just for myself, but for all the moments I had let slip by in silence. In that moment, I realized that solitude had transformed me. It was no longer a void, but a canvas, one that I could fill with colors of my choosing, music, art, connection. And as the applause faded, I understood that this was just the beginning of a beautiful journey. As I stood in the small, brightly lit room of the community shelter, the faint smell of crayons and dried paint hung in the air, mixing with the sound of laughter and chatter from the children. My heart swelled with a sense of fulfillment as I prepared for my music lesson with the kids. It had been a few weeks since I started volunteering, and each session felt like a little piece of magic. I was no longer just Lucas, an aging man wrestling with his solitude. I was now a music teacher, a mentor, and, most importantly, a part of something bigger. Mr. Lucas, Mr. Lucas. A chorus of voices called as they rushed towards me, their small faces beaming with excitement. It was a motley crew of kids, each with their own story, but today, they were all united by the joy of music. I smiled, feeling the warmth of their enthusiasm wash over me. All right, everyone, who's ready to make some noise? I asked, lifting my guitar. The kids erupted in cheers, and for a moment, I felt like a rock star. As I strummed the first chords, I glanced around the room, my gaze landing on Ethan. He was sitting a bit apart from the others, his brow furrowed in concentration as he watched me intently. There was something about him that pulled at my heartstrings, a quiet resilience that reminded me of my younger self. After the class, as the children scampered off to grab their snacks, I approached Ethan, who was still sitting on the edge of his chair, clutching a small ukulele. "Hey, Ethan," I said gently. "You did great today. I can see you have a special talent." He looked up at me, his big brown eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "Thanks, Mr. Lucas, but I don't think I'm as good as everyone else." His voice was soft, almost a whisper, and I could sense the weight of something heavy on his heart. "Talent isn't just about being the best," I replied, sitting down beside him. "It's about expressing yourself and having fun. Why don't you show me what you can do?" I smiled encouragingly, hoping to coax him out of his shell. Ethan hesitated, then slowly began to pluck the strings of his ukulele. The notes were raw and unrefined, but they carried a bittersweet melody that tugged at my heart. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the music wash over me. When he finished, I opened my eyes to find him looking at me expectantly. "That was beautiful," I said, genuinely impressed. "You have a gift, Ethan. Have you ever thought about writing your own songs?" He shook his head, biting his lower lip. "I don't know. I don't have anyone to write about," he admitted. My heart sank a little as I realized he was carrying the burden of loss. I lost my mom a few months ago," he said, his voice trembling. "I'm really sorry to hear that," I said softly, feeling a deep connection form between us. "I lost someone important to me, too. It's tough to deal with, isn't it?" Ethan nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "I just miss her. She used to sing to me and play music with me." "Music can be a way to keep their memory alive," I suggested gently. "When I play, I feel closer to the people I've lost. It helps me remember the good times." He looked up at me, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Really? You think I could do that?" "Absolutely," I replied, feeling my protective instincts ignite. "Let's work on it together. You can write a song about your mom, and we can play it together." A small smile broke through Ethan's sadness, and I felt a sense of purpose fill me. In that moment, I realized that our shared vulnerability was creating a bond that would help us both heal. As we began to brainstorm ideas for a song, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Perhaps this journey through solitude was leading me to something profound, something that transcended my own struggles. "Maybe I can call it Songs for Mom," Ethan suggested, his eyes shining with newfound determination. "I love that title," I said enthusiastically. "Let's make sure it's a song she would be proud of." As we dove into the world of melodies and lyrics, I could feel the weight of my own regrets slowly lifting. In guiding Ethan through his pain, I was rediscovering my own joy and purpose. It was a beautiful reminder that even in solitude, we could find connections that not only enriched our lives, but also allowed us to make a difference. As I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie for the gallery opening, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and anxiety. The invitation to showcase my artwork was a milestone I never anticipated in my solitary journey. Each brushstroke had become a reflection of my evolving spirit, a testament to the beauty I had rediscovered in solitude. My heart raced as I recalled the countless hours spent in front of the canvas, losing myself in hues and textures, far removed from the bleakness that had once filled my life. "Lucas, are you ready?" Sarah's voice pulled me from my reverie. She was a whirlwind of energy, her enthusiasm infectious. "Ready as I'll ever be," I replied, forcing a smile. "I just hope people like what they see." "Of course they will. You've poured your soul into these paintings. They're a part of you," she reassured me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "And remember, this is a celebration of your journey, not just an exhibition." As we arrived at the gallery, the buzz of conversation mingled with the soft strains of a jazz trio playing in the corner. I stepped inside, my breath hitching at the sight of my paintings adorning the walls, each one a chapter of my life, a narrative of my rebirth. I walked through the exhibit, feeling a swell of pride and gratitude. There was Sarah, chatting animatedly with a couple of art enthusiasts, and there was Ethan, his wide eyes taking in the colors and stories I had created. "Hey, Lucas, this one is my favorite," Ethan exclaimed, pointing to a vibrant piece depicting a sunset over a tranquil lake. "It looks like magic." "Thanks, buddy," I said, ruffling his hair. I wanted to capture the feeling of peace that comes with watching the sun dip below the horizon. It's a reminder that every day has its beauty. "Can we paint together again soon?" he asked, his face lighting up with anticipation. "Absolutely. We'll make it a regular thing," I promised. The connection we had forged through art had become a lifeline for both of us, and I realized how much this young boy had rekindled my own passion for creation. As the evening progressed, I found myself engaged in conversations with people who appreciated my work. They asked questions about my inspiration, and for the first time in years, I felt seen, not for my job title or my past, but for my authentic self. "Lucas, this piece here, what's the story behind it?" a woman asked, gesturing to a canvas of a solitary figure standing atop a mountain, arms outstretched toward the sky. "That represents my journey through loneliness and into self-discovery," I explained, feeling a warmth spread through me as I spoke. "It symbolizes finding strength in solitude and embracing one's own company." "Beautiful," she said, nodding thoughtfully. "It resonates with many of us who've experienced similar feelings. Thank you for sharing that." Later, as I stood quietly, taking it all in, I was approached by a distinguished-looking man with an air of sophistication. "Lucas, I'm James, the owner of this gallery," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Your work is exceptional. I can see the passion behind each stroke." "Thank you, James. That means a lot," I said, my heart racing. "I'd like to discuss the possibility of representing you," he said, his eyes gleaming with sincerity. "Your art deserves to be shared on a larger scale." I stood there, overwhelmed by the weight of his words. My dreams had always felt distant, almost absurd to entertain. But here they were, laid out before me. "Really? I don't even know what to say," I stammered, my mind racing with possibilities. "Let's talk about your vision and how we can make that happen," he encouraged, his demeanor warm and inviting. As I engaged in conversation with James, I felt a shift within me. The fear of failure that had haunted me for so long began to dissipate. I realized that this was more than just an opportunity for recognition. It was a chance to finally step into the life I had always yearned for, a life filled with creativity, connection, and purpose. With every word exchanged, I felt a sense of fulfillment washing over me, a deep contentment I never thought possible. Solitude had transformed into a canvas of possibilities, and for the first time, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. As I settled into my newfound rhythm, a sense of calm enveloped me, a stark contrast to the chaos of my earlier years. I was finally reveling in my passions, painting vibrant canvases and strumming melodies on my guitar, when my phone rang. The caller ID read Mark, an old colleague whose name stirred up a mix of nostalgia and regret. I hesitated for a moment, the memories of long hours, relentless deadlines, and our camaraderie flashing through my mind. I answered, curiosity piqued. "Lucas, it's Mark," he said, his voice shaky yet familiar. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." I took a deep breath, sensing the weight behind his words. "Not at all, Mark. It's good to hear from you. How have you been?" A long pause followed, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his mind. "I've been, well, not great, to be honest. I just got some news from the doctor. It's terminal." The gravity of his statement hit me like a punch to the gut. "Oh my God, Mark. I'm so sorry to hear that." I replied, my heart racing. "What can I do?" He sighed, a sound filled with both resignation and relief. "I've been thinking a lot about life, about choices. I regret not reaching out sooner, not being there for you when you needed a friend. Well, maybe we can change that. Would you like to meet?" I offered, unsure of how this reunion would unfold, but feeling an undeniable urge to reconnect. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I'd like that." A few days later, I found myself sitting in a small cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the sweet scent of pastries. I spotted Mark entering, his face a roadmap of the years we had both traveled, but his eyes carried a spark of the man I once knew. I waved him over, my heart heavy with anticipation. "Lucas," he said, sitting down and managing a weak smile. "It's been too long." "It has," I replied, searching for the right words. "How are you holding up?" Mark shrugged, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. "I'm trying to make peace with it. I've been following your journey, you know. I'm proud of you for pursuing your art and music again. You always had that spark." His compliment warmed me, but I felt a twinge of guilt. "Thanks. But I neglected so much for years, Mark. I focused on work instead of the things that brought me joy." He nodded, understanding glimmering in his eyes. We were both caught in that grind. "I admired your dedication, but I wish I had learned to follow my passions like you did." As we shared stories of our past, I felt the years of silence melt away. We laughed and reminisced, but the reality of his illness loomed like a shadow over our conversation. Eventually, Mark shifted the topic. "Lucas, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his tone serious. "I've been funding a scholarship for underprivileged kids to access music and art classes. It's a small program, but it means a lot to me. I want you to take it over." I blinked in surprise, processing his words. "Mark, I don't know if I'm the right person for that. I'm just starting to find my footing in my own life." He leaned closer, intensity in his gaze. "You are the right person. You've already made a difference in Ethan's life, and I know you can do the same for others. This program has the potential to change lives, just like art and music changed yours." The weight of his request settled on my shoulders, and I felt a rush of emotion. "I'd be honored, Mark. I'll do everything I can to ensure it helps those kids. It's what you would have wanted." A look of relief washed over his face. "Thank you, Lucas. It means a lot to me. I've always believed in your ability to inspire." In that moment, I realized how intertwined our lives had become, even after all those years. Mark's illness had brought us back together, and through this unexpected opportunity, I felt a renewed sense of purpose flow through me. Solitude had transformed into a bridge between our past and present, allowing me to forge connections that I had thought were lost forever. As we finished our coffee and shared more stories, I felt a warmth inside me, a sense of hope emerging from the shadows of regret. Mark's journey might be coming to an end, but together, we were creating a legacy, a chance to impact lives through creativity and passion. In that small cafe, amidst laughter and bittersweet memories, I found a deeper understanding of life's fragility and the power of connection, reminding me that even in solitude, we can find ways to make a difference.